Source Pro in Conversation is brought to you in association with Leapin, Australia's leading plan manager and two-time winner of the Most Outstanding Plan Management Award. Visit leapin.com.au to learn more.
Hello everyone, as you've just heard, my name is Emma Price and I'm the founder and CEO of Source Pro. We're going to flip things around a little bit now because Caleb's been guiding all of us through some of these incredible sessions and we can't leave without hearing a little bit more about his story. So today we get the privilege of turning the spotlight back on Caleb because there's a lot that he can tell us about his journey. So thanks for being here, Caleb.
Thank you so much.
So Caleb, you've turned what could have been the toughest chapter of your life into something pretty extraordinary. Looking back, what's been the biggest lesson or unexpected gift that you've learnt from the journey?
I'd actually say, in a simple sense, it's that I am enough. Yeah. Which is it's weird. It's sort of, I always become quite emotional when I think about it because I think before I had my stroke, I was a very ambitious performer. I was kind of like had my sights set on Broadway and I was certainly making inroads to go that way. And I think that I was someone who really thrived in, performing, not to say that I was performative, but I guess taking on other characters and allowing other scripts to be the vehicle for connection and all that kind of stuff. And fundamentally, even when I don't know what I might be doing at any moment or I'm a bit lost or whatever, I'm enough. I'm there, I'm enough, I'm showing up as me. And I think that fundamentally the biggest, I see it definitely as a gift, as a real privilege, is to have that knowingness that we are exactly as we are and we can do exactly whatever we want with that knowledge from this point. And yeah, I'm very grateful for that knowledge.
That's amazing. You were only 24 when you had your stroke. I mean, you were, you're headed for Broadway. Like it must have been such a big thing to deal with because at 24 we're still really young, and it must have just been such a big thing to have to deal with at that age.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing is, it definitely was such a big thing to deal with at that age, and I guess many years on, I always like to be like, oh, it only happened a couple of years ago. It's definitely a long time since.
We won't divulge that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I don't care. But the thing is, being 24 now, I can say with a lot of perspective that it was such a formative time in my life, such an explorative time of my life. And I was, and still am, a very advantageous person, but I think my perspective then was very different in terms of my focus was probably a little more self-centered, if I'm being real about that.
We all are in our 20s.
Yeah, sure. And I just happened to have the body that was the vehicle to sort of do that thing. I worked very hard at it. I've never been just like naturally gifted or that sort of thing. I'm naturally a very tenacious person, a very hard worker. But when I did have my stroke, it was a very severe subarachnoid hemorrhage. So that meant that other than initially almost losing, my life, I did lose all my faculties. So I lost my ability to walk, to talk, to swallow, to see, to breathe. And although that those are huge challenges, and I don't want to sort of diminish it because I can operate with a level of functionality of all of those now, it really gave me a huge opportunity to kind of witness rebirth in a young adult's body, and so essentially my perspective is, for me and just for me, I'm very grateful for that experience, which still the legacy lives on. I still see double. I've still got all the things. I just function with them.
As you've
really
said, a
well.
number of hidden disabilities.
Yeah.
What was the time frame? I mean, you were 24. How long did it sort of take for your recovery period?
So I guess I see my recovery journey as just an ongoing journey in terms of like a real functional recovery journey. So it happened at the end of 2008, just 3 days after I turned 24. Wow. So it was like, happy birthday. So I'd just been cast in Chicago, the musical, in the Australian tour, and I was like, what a birthday present. Turned 24, 3 days later, most severe grading of the rarest form of stroke. Then I'm in a coma. So it's November 17. Basically then I did rehab for 2.5 years. So it was a very long time for me from a clinical point of view, but there's a lot of medical intervention. I've had a massive, like a craniotomy. Then there's all sorts of rehabilitation. So 2.5 years, I said, of inpatient and outpatient rehab.
Gosh, it's a long journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh my goodness. But I guess what's come out of it is something for a lot of really amazing things. Totally. But also the Genyus Network.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about that. It's a global community for people navigating stroke and brain injury and disability. Tell us more about it and what it is and what you do.
So Genyus is really about finding the right person at the right time. And what I really struggled with in the early stages, like I went to peer support groups and peer support meetings and all that sort of stuff, and none of us could talk about who we were. We could talk about what had happened to us, and we could talk about what we were struggling with and what disabilities or deficits we were navigating, or what, and this is all to do with, many years on, I feel like I've got a bit of an insight as to why systems may be partly contributing to this. But we were so reduced to our symptoms, and we'd lost this notion of our story and who we were. And I am, as I said, a pretty tenacious kind of guy. And I wanted to be on Broadway, so I'm like, I've got a story to tell. And then the thing is that when I started to reach out to other young people navigating similar things like me, they didn't want to hear my story, they had their own story. And so Genyus Network really is about creating a safe space where people touched by trauma, disability and difference can share, connect and celebrate on the journey of life living with, whether it's disability or the afterlife of acquiring disability. It's about having that safe space where you can see yourself not just as a sort of through the clinical lens, but through the social lens.
Yeah. Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank
What
you so much.
what an incredible thing to come out of such a traumatic experience.
Yeah,
you must be very proud. Well
done.
done.
No, thank you. I'm incredibly grateful.
So from the work you've done with Genyus Network, what's one of the insights that you think allied health professionals really hear, with allied health professionals being our audience here today?
Yeah. I think that really it is about, let's look through the myriad of symptoms and get to the story. Help amplify that story, because so much of the system and so much of the life after, or living with, whatever you want to call it, we have to manage symptoms, we have to navigate life and all these complexities with all these things that reduce us to a collection of things that are, often seen as deficits or whatever. They're not strengths-based, and even more than just being strengths-based, I want to focus on story-based things. And really the point is about going to health professionals. You actually are the person in the position of power. You have the greatest power. You've got the greatest knowledge of this space. You aren't the expert of the experience, but you can be the greatest ally of someone and give them the tools to navigate this experience and be the leader of their journey. And so the biggest message really is to find your way in by bringing a bit of yourself to the table to help that other person bring the true part of themselves to the table.
Very true, very true. And I think in terms of, being able to action some of that in practice. I mean, you've just stepped into a new role. Mm-hmm. You're a board director at OT Australia, Occupational Therapy Australia, which is one of our wonderful friends. What excites you the most about stepping into that role, and what changes you can bring to allied health?
I am really honoured to have been successfully voted in as a board director at OTA, and to be, I guess, sort of flying the flag of really embedding lived experience leadership into positions where you can influence people who can influence change. And I think that in my experience, occupational therapy as a general space is one of the most adaptive and responsive and collaborative with people with living experience. And so to have the opportunity to be on the board is amazing experience for me, just to see how does this work at this level, but also to truly work with a group of people in an organisation that is invested in listening to the perspectives of living experience and understand how does our policy or how do our frameworks help actually amplify the true lived experience. How do we actually help do that? And so really what I'm trying to do is to bring my knowledge, my experience, and a bit of my vulnerability that is required in that space, but with a lot of, I've got an element of resilience which comes from a lot of years with a lot of support and a lot of privilege in that. And so I want to bring that privilege and help give it another platform.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's such a wide network of occupational therapists in there. So it's really great opportunity to make a mark in a big way and really make a big difference. So that's an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
amazing.
amazing.
It's an amazing organisation.
They are absolutely. Finally, I've got one more question.
One more, juicy.
Yeah. See what I can get in the last few minutes. So your mission is to remind people of the extraordinary potential in everyone. Mm-hmm. What's the message that you want to leave us with here today, both as professional as simply as just humans?
The message really is to trust the centre of the experience, to trust that whether, at the centre of every experience is the person with the living experience, and they do have knowledge, they do have wisdom. Experience is the wisdom, and let that lead us. Let's create safe spaces where we can actually invite and envelop those experiences to amplify the voices of lived experience. Use your tools and all of your strategies to create that safe space for someone to truly thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. That lived experience is so important. It really is. So it brings so much knowledge and so much experience to working with families and people with disability. So thank you for joining me. Thanks for flipping things around. It's been fun.
I'm adaptive as well.
And thank you so much for being part of our Source Pro program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure.